Good evening. My name is Erin Donovan Boyle, and I'm the Executive Director of the Greater Newport Chamber of Commerce. I would like to welcome our viewers to this forum tonight. You will be hearing from 5 candidates for Aquidneck Island State House of Representative offices. This forum is a collaboration between the Greater Newport Chamber of Commerce, League of Women Voters, Alliance for a Livable Newport, East Bay TV, Newport Buzz, Newport This Week, and W80K. The purpose of the collaboration is to inform the Newport County voters. I would like to point out that the positions held by any one of the collaborators do not represent the viewpoints or opinions of others in the group. It is also important to note that the Chamber, Alliance for Livable Newport, the League of Women Voters, and Newport This Week are nonpartisan and do not endorse candidates. The forum recording can be viewed through links to the collaborators' websites on social media, on public access TV, and for listening on W80K radio, where candidates have also been invited to follow up and expand upon their views. Tonight's questions have been a combined effort of the Alliance for Livable Newport, the Chamber of Commerce, League of Women Voters, and other members of the collaboration. We encourage viewers to also view past forums, including 2 from the 17 Middletown Council candidates, school committees, and other Newport primary forums. Again, thank you to the candidates for participating tonight, and we look forward to getting started. We have 5 state representative candidates this evening. From District 71, we have Michelle Mcgaw and Amy Very. Nathan Melvin was unable to join us this evening. From District 72, we have Terry Cortran and Ken Mendonca. From District 75, we have Lauren Carson. Her opponent, Patrick Donovan, was also unavailable and not able to join us tonight. For all watching, here's an overview of the forum. It will last about 90 minutes and will consist of 4 parts. First, candidates will begin with 90-second opening statements. Names were drawn at random for order and will rotate from one district to the other with each question. There will be 5 questions. Candidates will have 90 seconds to respond to each question. There will then be a few yes or no questions, with the candidates raising their hands to indicate their responses. They will also be given an opportunity to explain their response for all questions that have been asked. The forum will end with 90-second closing statements. Maureen Mooney from the League of Women Voters will monitor timing of responses with a stopwatch and signaling with a card when a candidate has 15 seconds remaining and a red card when time has expired. If a candidate does not stop speaking, the mute feature will be turned on. So now we're looking forward to kicking off this forum with our opening statements. I will ask each of you to speak for 90 seconds on the topics of what your top priorities are, or for the reasons you have chosen to run. I would like to start with our first candidate, Michelle Mcgaw. Welcome, Michelle.
Thank you, Erin, and thank you to all that organized this. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with everyone. So my name is Michelle Mcgaw, and I'm running for state representative for District 71. That's parts of Portsmouth, Tiverton, and Little Compton. I am a resident of Portsmouth. I've been here for about 30 years and also a pharmacist. So I've been working within the healthcare system for quite a while. And I honestly been working within my community for a good number of years, whether it was volunteering through schools, working through Little League, organizing the Challenger League through Little League, doing a lot of volunteer work in Portsmouth, but also getting involved within the communities across the district. A few years back, I started participating with both the Tiverton and Little Compton Democratic Town Committees, trying to figure out how I could work with them, how our 3 town committees could work together to collaborate on issues. We share legislators and we share issues, and it seemed like a good idea that we should all collaborate. And so I've been working within those communities. I've also been participating and helped to organize a Sakonnet Women's outreach group, trying to get more women involved in local politics and get them interested in running for school committee, town committees, town councils, and just getting them more involved in local politics as well.
Thank you, Michelle. Our next candidate is Amy Very. Welcome.
Well, thank you very much for having me and for the opportunity to speak with everyone. My name is Amy Very. I'm running for House Representatives seat in District 71. I'm a lifelong resident of Rhode Island and a resident of Little Compton for over 25 years. I live on my family farm. I'm a practicing attorney in both Massachusetts and Rhode Island. I practice primarily criminal defense and family law. I also volunteer and provide pro bono services for survivors of domestic violence and people in need of representation in family court. And I am also on the indigent panel list in Superior District and family courts to provide legal services to people who cannot afford it, who are accused of crimes, as well as individuals that the state seeks to certify to be hospitalized involuntarily. The reason I am running and seeking a position in our state house is because as a Rhode Island resident, I've watched our political leaders fail us time after time. We have an almost $11 billion budget. Our budgetary gap in this year alone over a period of 6 months has ballooned from 200 million to almost $1 billion. And we have our politicians that are rubber stamping budgets without holding anyone accountable, without anyone tracing where our money is being spent. And we're on a path to unaffordability of living in the state. My goal upon being elected is to advocate for an independent inspector general to audit where each and every penny of our taxpayer dollars are being spent to determine whether or not the money that is being allocated in the budget is actually making it where it needs to be, and also identify areas that can be cut as well as areas that need to be better funded. I am an independent voice. I do not wish to vote solely upon party lines, but believe that there are good ideas on both sides of the aisle. And
Thank you, Amy. And now we'll move on to our next candidate from District 75, Lauren Carson.
Thank you, Erin. And thank you to all the organizations that are putting this together this evening. Throughout my 6 years as state representative for House District 75, I promised to represent Newport honestly and transparently. And throughout my years of service, I have worked tirelessly for Newport and Rhode Island. But when I decided to run for a 4th term, I had no idea the challenges that we would face. And so now more than ever, we must keep Newport and Rhode Island moving. Over the next 2 years, we must make very critical decisions guiding Rhode Island out of this pandemic. I promise to continue to be a champion for the environment and to support investments in our aging infrastructure. I promise to support building a balanced quality of life for our aging community while supporting our seasonal economy and ensuring stability for our year-round residents, because they're the people that I represent. I will support investments in expanding the Newport economy for all with an emphasis on preserving our historic neighborhoods. And I promise to support increased state and municipal aid and for education funding, because keeping government stable is good for Newport, it's good for families, and it's good for our communities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lauren. And now I'd like to welcome from District 72, Ken Mendonca.
Thank you, Erin. Thank you for the sponsors of the forum. My name is Ken Mendonca, and I served as a state representative in District 72, Portsmouth and Middletown for the 2017 and 2018 session, and I'm seeking your vote on November 3rd. A few of my priorities are to continue holding your government accountable, as I did while serving on the House Finance Committee. You can see videos of me holding the administration, general office holders, and departments accountable at ElectCanRI. I will also advocate to protect those most vulnerable and not sit on the sidelines as we continue to lose more lives to COVID and the House remains on recess. How many more lives will be lost before the House of Representatives returns and does their job? I will call for legislative oversight hearings as the Republican caucus has been calling for months. We have also lived by the governor's executive orders for 6 months as the economy continues to stumble and businesses fail, and the House remains on recess. The House of Representatives, a lawmaking body, has abdicated their responsibility to their constituents and the public. I will not be concerned about going against the governor to do my job as an elected official. Thank you, and I look forward to the forum tonight.
Thank you, Ken. And now we'll ask Terry Cortran, also running for District 72. Welcome.
Sorry about that. Good evening, and thank you for having me this evening. I am been honored to serve the last 2 years as the representative for District 72, and I am running for re-election to bring one of the main points that I wanted to bring as a state rep was to increase accessibility from the State House to constituents in District 72. And I was honored to be recognized as the legislator of all the legislators in the House and Senate of having the most publicly advertised constituent meetings. So that was a real priority for me and will continue to be. I want to engage with constituents and have them tell me all the time how they feel. And I just would like to say that as your representative, I have not been on recess during the time of COVID. I never would have realized that this was, as any of us, we did not know this was going to be coming before us, but I have worked diligently to serve needs of individual constituents, helping them with unemployment, DEM, DMV, all types of state agencies that they needed help with. My priorities are in continuing to improve accessibility and transparency at the State House, education, and protecting our environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you all very much for your opening statements. We'll now move on to the general questions portion of the forum. I will ask several questions that have been composed by the collaborating organizations. A prompt slide will come on the screen, but it may be paraphrased due to space. I can repeat the question if it is needed. Please just ask. I will ask, each person will have 90 seconds to respond. I will ask the first candidate to respond, and each of you will respond to the same question. The first question and the first candidate will be Amy Very to answer the question. The first question is as follows. The state of Rhode Island has extraordinary budgetary issues due to a downturn in the economy because of the current pandemic. Can you discuss some of your ideas to help balance the budget, including which programs should be cut or added, where further scrutiny should be placed, what taxes you might be considering to generate additional revenue, and generally your approach to fiscal responsibility in these uncertain times?
Thank you. I may proceed. Sorry, my face is
Absolutely.
not. Okay,
Yeah.
sorry. So as I stated in my opening statement, I think before that we can have a discussion about what needs to be cut and what needs more funding, we first need to know what is being currently allocated to particular programs, whether or not specific funds that are allocated are actually making it to their final destination. We need an independent inspector general to audit the budget, audit the funds, and audit the spending. I would not advocate, and I do not advocate for increasing taxes. I think our tax burden is already onerous. If we want to help bolster our economy and increase revenue, our best bet is by reducing taxes. And while that may seem to be a contradiction on its face, we look at our sales tax, for example, in comparison to our neighboring states, and it is greater than both Connecticut and Massachusetts. If instead we reduced our sales tax, we would draw in business for our neighboring states, thereby increasing revenue, and that would increase our overall ability to therefore fund projects and programs that need more funding. However, by continuing to increase the budget or increase the tax burden on our businesses and on the individual residents, both living in our district and throughout the state, we're just encouraging more and more people to leave the state and to close down their businesses. And it's getting to a point where it is unaffordable to live here, unaffordable to do business here. As far as what should be cut.
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, we have to move on. And now I pose the same question to Lauren Carson. Please unmute your microphone.
Thank you, Erin. I think the key word here is uncertain, and you use that in the way the question was phrased, or the writers of the question put that word in there. We are completely uncertain about what the budget will look like. Make no mistake about that. Part of the reason we're uncertain is because we're waiting breathlessly for some kind of a compromise at the federal level. That is the key to not only our state budget, to every state budget, to every municipal budget across this state. I think that my critical take on the budget this year as we move forward is to design a give and take. I'm going into it with a give and take mentality. There are some things people are going to have to give, and there are some things that people are going to take. Everyone has been affected by this, from the richest person in the state to the poorest person, from the largest business to the mom and pop store on the corner. Everyone has been affected. And my approach to looking at this budget will be sure that everyone gets a little something, but everyone may have to give a little something in order to get there also, because we're in uncertain times and we really do not know what the future will hold. I think that I have somewhat of a realistic attitude about this. I'm looking forward to working on the budget later this year. I'm hoping that the federal government will, that the Congress will get it together and they'll be able to tell us how much money we have and that we could really move forward with the budget. But for now, we have to wait and see and each give a little to get a little.
Thank you, Lauren. And now we go to Ken.
Good question, Erin. I think what we have to look at, we'll know with the fall estimating conference as to where we stand from a budget perspective by the end of the month or early November. But I think what we have to look at is the decisions that were made earlier this year and what those impacts have on us. The governor has been sitting on $900 million worth of funds that haven't been allocated in hopes of trying to use that to fill the budget. In the meantime, you have businesses that are failing and not producing as much revenue. And so as those businesses fail, that's less income we're receiving. That's a bigger burden on the taxpayers and falls right back on the laps of the residential taxpayers. What we have to look at is we have to look at the budget as a whole, and everything has to be on the table for options. It could be a significant hole. And if money does not come from the federal government, it's going to fall back on the individual taxpayers themselves. And I think that, as I said in another forum, you have to look at everything has to be on the table. And if there has to be cuts, everybody has to hurt if there has to be increases. I certainly don't advocate for tax increases. I think what we've done here, the Fed has infused money, and we got money from the feds to try to help stabilize the economy, and the governor has rolled the dice to decide that she wasn't going to do that. So it'll fall on the laps of the governor and the General Assembly that's been missing in action. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ken. And now from Terry.
Well, I have to concur that there is a lot of uncertainty, and we may not know in October where we are with revenues. Senator Reid has said we may not know until after the election whether or not the federal government is going to come to our aid. So we are going to have to, and I want to go back to the 1.25 billion too, because it's my understanding that 700 million of that has either been spent or earmarked in COVID related expenses, and there has been strict guidance on what that money could or could not be spent on. I agree that we need to do whatever we can to protect our small businesses and to help them to make sure our small business loan funds are strong, and that our business, Rhode and Commerce, and all the agencies that support small businesses are able to continue doing so. But we can't, I don't think we're going to be able to cut our way out of this budget without, there's going to be so much hurt that goes around. And we do have to be very cognizant of our most vulnerable in this population, in our population who have already really borne the brunt of COVID. So I think we have to be careful about that. But I agree that we're going to have to look at everything has to be on the table, like my opponent just said. I agree with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. And now the last question to Michelle. Please unmute your microphone.
Sorry about that. This is certainly a challenge for all of our communities, for our state, and for states across the country. I mean, Rhode Island is not unique to Rhode Island, where we are facing uncertain economic challenges. That being said, there are things that we want to be addressing. We want to be as helpful as we can to our small businesses. I certainly agree with that. One thing that I would like to encourage is more focus, more attention to the proposal for revenue for Rhode Island. It's a bill that was submitted to provide a more equitable tax structure. In 2006, there were significant tax cuts to our highest income earners. And I would be supportive of looking at that and trying to bring our tax structure to something that's a little bit more equitable, something that requires taxpayers earning more than $475,000 a year to pay income tax that is similar to those of us with middle or lower incomes, so that they're paying a more equitable tax structure. One thing I want to say when I'm looking at the budget is it's a priority issue. And so, I want to make sure that we're looking at making things more effective rather than looking at cuts. We need to make sure that people continue to have access to food and to shelter and to healthcare. And so when we're looking at the budget,
thank you, Michelle.
Those priorities.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to our second question, and we will hear from Ken first. What steps will you take to support the hospitality and tourism industries?
Aaron, I just want to check here, just so, because the order, maybe I made a mistake with my order here, but I thought question 2 was the second person was going to be up, and then question 3, I'm number 5.
I apologize. I was doing question 1. I apologize.
I'm sorry about that. I mean, I'll lead off. I just trying to follow the chart here.
That is okay. I am going to switch gears. You are correct. You will go number 3. So I'm going back to question 1 for this. So Michelle, you will actually be the first one to speak. What steps will you take to support the hospitality and tourism industries and the Main Street businesses, which have been the hardest hit to recover from the pandemic?
There we go, sorry. I recognize how challenging it has been to our small businesses and to our hospitality industry. We need to, there is money that's available through the CARES Act that the governor has access to, and I would like to see that money be made available as loans or grants to our small business to help support them and to encourage people to access and to participate in our local tourism industry. It's a challenge right now. I mean, we need to make sure that we are doing everything as safely as possible. We need to make sure that we are following the restrictions and the guidelines to keep our residents, not only our residents, but the people who work in that environment safe. And so as far as supporting those businesses, I think we just need to help them with some of the relief, whether it's through grants or loans, excuse me. And also looking at any restrictions that might be in place for them and seeing, trying to come up with creative ways to help them stay prosperous during this time so that they can continue to be there moving forward after these challenging times.
Thank you. And now we'll go to Amy for the same question.
Thank you. What we need to do is demand that the governor release the CARES Act money. The CARES Act money was intended and earmarked for small businesses to assist them through the pandemic and during the economic shutdown. That money has not been released as it was intended, and instead the governor is holding on to that money in the hopes of plugging the almost $1 billion budget gap that has grown by almost $600 million in the period of 6 months. I think that is essential to maintaining an economy in Rhode Island, to ensure that our small businesses not only remain open, but also that they remain economically viable and they remain healthy. So that money needs to be earmarked for them. It needs to be released to them, and not through onerous hours and hours of filling out forms and going to this place and going to that place. It needs to be made simple. It needs to be streamlined and released immediately. Secondly, going forward, I think we need to reduce the tax burden on businesses. We also need to do things that are going to bolster and encourage people to come spend their money here in Rhode Island. That includes, as I said before, reducing the sales tax by reducing restrictions and regulations on businesses while ensuring that they're keeping the public safe. Also allow them to operate without the overburden of government interfering in the ability to operate. Thank you.
Thank you. And Lauren.
Erin, would you repeat the question, please?
Of course. What steps will you take to support the hospitality and tourism industries and Main Street businesses, which have been the hardest hit, to recover from the pandemic?
Okay, I wanted to hear that because in the question in the box, it doesn't say the Main Street businesses, it just says hospitality and tourism. And I think I have two different thoughts on that. I mean, the first thought that we all agree to is that we have to continue infusing money into small businesses to keep them going. I think we all agree to that. We're calling it different things. We're calling it loans and grants. We're calling it whatever, but that has to continue. And we need that support from the federal government as well to make that happen. I think that for many of the viewers, they may know that I chaired a House Study Commission on tourism for about 2.5 years, and I'm a friend to tourism and hospitality, given my the responsibilities of my district. I think that taking the lead from Discover Newport, who's changing their business model, I think that the hospitality and tourism industry needs to begin looking differently at the future of their industry. People may be traveling less. They're looking different places for different experiences. COVID is frightening them away from doing things that are more traditional hospitality and tourism related activities. And I think it's a perfect juncture point for a strategic redesign of tourism, particularly in the state of Rhode Island. And I've encouraged the Department of Commerce to do that, to really seek out money, to redesign how we market ourselves, why we market ourselves, the kind of unique experiences that we have here that make our visitors feel safe here. So I think it's a good opportunity to re-examine tourism in the state of Rhode Island, and I hope Commerce does that.
Thank you, Lauren. And now we'll go to Ken.
Thank you, Erin. It's, as we have seen, some businesses, and there was a long time business in Portsmouth, not necessarily in the district, Rhede's, that had to close down. It's unfortunate. I was talking to a small business owner last week who her business was inspected 2 weeks earlier by the state, and she got glowing marks and got a clean bill of health. The following week, a different inspector came in and had a different set of guidelines, and though her business passed, it didn't make the list. And so I think I think the pandemic is going to be here for quite some time. And that what we need to do is we need our government to work for us. And we know what techniques and things we need to do. And I think our government should be in there helping these businesses open up. Businesses know what they need to do. They've got plexiglass. We need to be able to, as these businesses die, it's just going to be a very cumulative effect on the taxpayers as those revenues dry up, and it falls back on the taxpayers, the residential taxpayers. So we need that infusion of cash, but we need our government and our General Assembly to get involved, to pass legislation to help these businesses. And in particular, they know what they need to do. Let them get the capacity. And if they're not following the rules, then go in there and help them follow the law. Right now it's executive order. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ken. And now we'll go to Terry.
Yes, I would be supportive. I think we should be working to think about how we're marketing tourism, because like Rep. Carson said, people aren't traveling the same way. So I think we should really think about marketing within the state, since we have all these border issues with COVID. And this winter is going to be hard for hospitality. I don't know how we're going to get around that. So we are going to need that infusion of cash. It's my understanding that the 500 million that the governor's holding on to, that money was earmarked for the control of governors. So I think she's waiting to see if the federal government comes forward with more money. And I hope they do. It's been, it's a terrible abdication of their responsibility that they haven't been able to come up with something so far. But we definitely need to support our small businesses. Hospitality, I know, is critical to this area. And I spoke to the owner of Rhode's, and he personally was very concerned with his own health issues being exposed to the public, just as a side note. I know it was sad to see him go out, but I think a new restaurant is coming in place. And so I wish him well, and I wish the new business great success. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to the third question, and we'll start with you, Ken, for the first response. The greater Newport region has been significantly impacted by COVID. The impact to our local economy has only begun to be felt, and some estimates include between 40 to 50% of businesses in the hospitality and tourism industry may not survive, and up to 5,000 people may lose their jobs. A long-term regional economic recovery and resiliency strategy needs to be put in place. Can you discuss what your vision for that recovery looks like and how you might see regionalization of some of those efforts come into play?
Well, that's a good question. I would hope that we don't lose 40% of our businesses, because if we lose 40% of our businesses, we've got major economic problems here in the state.
Just to clarify, 40 to 50% of hospitality and tourism industry.
It's still a big number that we rely on. It's still a very big number that we rely on. I'm not sure if there can be alliances, if buying bulk helps some of these businesses to try to reduce some of their costs. That could be a potential option. I think that what we have here in Rhode Island is we have a jewel, and I would hate to see us try to do something to make us less attractive for people to come and see us. I think that we're all going to have to figure out how to live with this virus for quite some time. And I don't think we can have a big downturn. But again, there should be some consortia, and I would hope that the chambers are getting together to be able to talk about it and see if there's some synergy between different organizations to be able to set up, come to New England to visit our shorelines and so forth. It is, I work in the defense industry, and I've always advocated that there is an opportunity to grow the defense industry. I had some alliances when I was in the State House, and I think that that's another avenue, because with that industry, people come to eat, they go at lunchtime, they visit those local eateries. It has a major economic impact. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. And now, Terry.
I'm sorry, can you read out the question one more time, Erin?
Of course.
Sorry about that.
No, the greater Newport region has been significantly impacted by COVID. The impact to our local economy has only begun to be felt, and some estimates include between 40 to 50% of businesses in the hospitality and tourism industry may not survive, and up to 5,000 people may lose their jobs. A long-term regional economic recovery and resiliency strategy needs to be put in place. Can you discuss what your vision for that recovery looks like and how you might see regionalization of some of those efforts coming into play?
Well, when you talk about regionalization, one thing that I think has been too bad is that the states, our neighboring states, we all have different criteria for when we allow our neighbors to cross over without quarantining. I think that has created hurdles for our businesses in the area. I do wish that we had a more regional approach to that. One that one element that has, I know my business has been affected by that. I'm sure others have too. How we can regionalize. I would think our tourism commission could be working together to elevate New England as a whole, as to attract people from our neighboring states to visit here. It's going to be a difficult time for hospitality, but I do think it's an opportunity for the island to further diversify the types of businesses that we attract here, which is something that I've heard business groups such as the Chamber talk about for a long time. And I think this is really an opportunity to be looking for other types of businesses that we can grow here so that we're not so reliant solely on tourism. Thank you.
Now we'd like to hear from Michelle.
Thank you. I want to expand upon that a little bit, what Terry was just talking about as far as diversifying. You know, we all seem to agree that COVID is today. It's going to be here for a little while, and we're going to have to work through those issues. Rhode Island has been very heavily dominated by the tourism industry, and that's done well for us. But in these changing times, we may need to think about alternative opportunities. One thing I would like to see is maybe us investing and making more opportunity through green energy initiatives. There's a lot that we can do. There's been a lot of discussion about climate and what we need to do to change the way we manage our energy. And I would like to see us getting more involved in that. We have a lot of resources through our universities where, you know, we have engineers that could be working on new, greener, renewable energy infrastructures, allowing our college graduates to stay close to home and not have to go off somewhere because there will be jobs here. We have the boating industry that with a lot of the materials and the ingenuity to help us create some of the products that would be necessary for a greener infrastructure. And I think working through a green energy economy, we could become a leader in that and create real good paying jobs, well-educated jobs across Rhode Island. And as far as regionalization, there are a group of legislators across New England who are looking to do this in conjunction with legislators in Rhode Island.
Thank you, Michelle. And now we'll hear from Amy.
Oh, thank you. And listening to my fellow candidates' answers to this question, I was struck by the notion that we need to scrap our current hospitality and tourism industry, which essentially is turning our backs upon the current brick and mortar businesses that are existing in our state. I think that is a dangerous precedent. I think Rhode Islanders as a whole have worked very hard throughout the pandemic to implement safety and security measures to make sure that our day-to-day lives are safe and that we're complying with the CDC recommendations. And I think that is one strategy that going forward that can help encourage and motivate people to want to re-engage with our tourism industry is by promoting all the safety measures that we have put in place and that we continue to put in place, and to just show and showcase all the efforts that our various hospitality businesses are doing to ensure that the health and safety of people are the utmost priority. I think by doing that, you're going to encourage people to say, hey, Rhode Island's a place I want to go visit. Newport County is where I want to be. Let me go there because they are keeping us safe. And that's what we should be doing to help bolster and rebuild our tourism industry. As far as regionalization, perhaps I think it's always a good idea to listen to other people and to pick other people's brains to find out what is working in their area, what is not working, and utilize those ideas to help bolster our own hospitality industry within the state. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we'll go to Lauren.
Thank you. Well, the first thing that comes to mind for me is to step back and look at what's going on in the general economy. The stock market is doing very well. I don't know if folks are familiar with the fact that on August 28th, CNN and Moody's recognized Rhode Island as #3 in the country for returning our economy back to normalization based on 37 factors. So what that's telling me is that some specific industries are doing very well and some specific industries are not doing well at all. So we need to have a more thorough assessment of which industries in Rhode Island really need the help and which ones are doing very well. For example, my friends that work in the marine trains industry have told me that they had a banner year. It was their best year ever. So we have a situation where one industry in our region has done exceptionally well and one has not done as well. So I would encourage a very thorough assessment of which industries really need the help. I think we generally know what they are, and then targeting our strategic resources toward those industries. Now, if I look particularly at my community, if I look at Newport, we have a wonderful asset in the North End to develop that property. I'm sure everyone's familiar with that. That's not my district, but certainly that is a regional asset. And if we can bring 21st century jobs relative to the ones that Michelle's been talking about, have those folks working up there, that would be good for the entire region. So I think it's a matter of really assessment, digging in, and figuring out which industries to invest in going forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lauren. And now we'll move on to the next question, the fourth question, and you'll start, Lauren.
Okay.
So the cost of living on Aquidneck Island has grown exponentially and been exacerbated by the pandemic. We are seeing an influx of out-of-state new residences, rising property values, and the decrease in available housing inventory. What solutions can you offer for affordable workforce housing?
Well, that's a complicated question because the real estate industry is also a thriving industry on this island. So we don't want to necessarily suppress the cost of housing because the real estate industry makes a decent living off of that. But yet we have low income and working people that really are unable to sustain the cost of housing here. So we have two very specific and large differing points of view and stakeholder groups that are at the table on this issue. And again, I think that relative to my district and relative to Newport specifically, which is what I know the best, is that we really need to we have very little property left in Newport where I represent. And the only place that we have property left in Newport is in the North End, which I spoke to just recently. And so for my district, that's one of the really hopes that we can attract and build some moderate income housing up there for young families and for working people. We also have a housing bond that's going to go on we don't know when we're going to vote on it quite yet, but it looks like we'll probably vote on it after the first of the year. And that's going to infuse some bond money into the revitalization of low income housing. And I will be supporting that.
Thank you. And now we'll ask Amy, same question.
Oh, thank you. So I think we should, on the one hand, be glad to see that our property values are doing so well, and that can be reflective of not only the services our various towns are able to provide, but also the beauty of the environment that we live in. However, it is sad to see that homes are becoming so unaffordable that people have to look elsewhere and outside the state for places to live. I think that in part, one way we can help make homes more affordable is by reducing our tax burden on the property owners. We see that, concerns about rents increasing. Well, rents are increasing because the property owners can no longer have to increase them because the property taxes are also increasing. So I think it's important to look at our tax structure, what we're spending our money on, and hopefully help reduce that tax burden. And that may help make rental properties at least more affordable for people entering the workforce and people at lower incomes of the economic spectrum. I think as far as home ownership, I think that's a very important thing. And I encourage everyone to, to set that as a goal. There are programs currently in place that help provide funding for first-time homeowners, as well as for younger homeowners and minority homeowners. And I hope that those programs stay in place and do not suffer significant cuts. And while I do not believe that the state should be in the business of forcing municipalities to rewrite their zoning codes in order to fit some cookie cutter affordable housing structure, I also think it's important that we need to evaluate what is important to us.
Thank you, Amy. And now we go to Michelle.
This is a significant issue across the state, including in our district. We are not immune to that in any part of our state. I've talked to families, all of the towns in District 71, where people are concerned that they can't afford a home, where, you know, even people who are earning a good living are still living with their parents because they can't afford a home in the community that they grew up in. One thing I would like to talk about is, you know, we have a requirement for affordable housing right now across the state, and there are just too few. I believe it's only 6 communities out of all of the communities in Rhode Island that are compliant with the requirements for affordable housing. We have a commission to oversee that, and what is that commission doing? I don't believe that commission is even in place anymore. But when we set up guidelines for how much we are going to invest in affordable housing across the state, you know, we need to put some teeth behind that and really have people looking at that and make sure that you know, we are either offering the carrot or the stick to make sure that our communities are complying with the affordable housing requirements that we have already implemented and our communities are just not complying with. So I think putting that commission in place and really putting some teeth behind it would go a long way.
Thank you, Michelle. And now we'll go to Terry.
Thank you. There's a few things that come to my mind on this specific to Aquidneck Island. And one thing that's driving up property values on the island is the prevalence of Airbnbs. So I think we could look to address them, to regulate them a little bit more strictly. So, because I think there's many people that I've talked to that are somewhat dismayed that their neighborhoods go dark in the winter time. So we have a lot of second homeowners and a lot of Airbnb. So that is one issue that is driving up the price of housing on the island. So I think we have to be honest about that. And if we choose to, you know, we should think about whether we want to address that and regulate them a little bit more strongly. In Portsmouth, we have huge pieces of property. Our density is, you know, we're not in a very densely populated in terms of how close our houses are. So I think we could think about relaxing zoning laws to allow property owners to build in-law apartments, you know, expand the dwellings on their property so that they could have expanded family members. That would help elderly people to live less expensively. And I have personally been working with people in, well, maybe I can finish that up in my closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. And now we'll move on to Ken for the same question.
Hi, Erin. That's a good question that you know is a challenge to answer again. What we, you know, the community that we live in, you know, as working in the defense industry and trying to hire young talent and getting the understanding that it's very difficult because the cost of homes are so expensive here. But what it really comes down to is fundamentally, you don't want the state involved. We have passed various bonds to help revitalize neighborhoods, to infuse for, you know, affordable housing. But what it really comes down to is it comes down to the local district. It comes down to the city or town to make the commitment to decide that, look, in District 72, it's a beautiful district. We have a lot of protected land. And as we continue to preserve open spaces, that's less available spaces for building. And then that adds to the formula of increasing the cost of property because there's less supply. And so what it really will take is the local town councils to make a decision as to whether or not they want to buy into to do this, and then try to make it happen. It's got to happen at the local level. It's got to happen at the town council level. If they don't have it, then, you know, then it's not going to happen. And just a side note, that when you look at the overall formula, there are mobile home parks in Middletown and Portsmouth, may not necessarily be in the district. Some are. That doesn't calculate in the formula for affordable housing the way it stands today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you. And now we'll move on to our last general question of the evening. And we will start with Amy for your response. A number of citizens feel that there is a skills gap in Rhode Island that is hindering economic development. What specific changes should be made to Rhode Island's approach to education to address this gap?
So I know there have been efforts to make education more affordable in the last legislative sessions, including providing free tuition at our local colleges to help encourage people to gain new skills to help them re-enter the workforce, or perhaps obtain jobs that they didn't hold skills that were previously qualify them for those jobs. I think we need to also look at the high school level, where we did cut the funding to many of the vocational programs. And those are important, valuable skills that also provide the potential for high paying jobs, such as in the trade industry, in plumbing, electricity. And I think we should look to restoring those programs, because not everyone is interested in going forward and obtaining a college degree. And not everyone is in a financial position where they can afford to pay student loans if they should pursue a higher degree. And just because you have a college degree doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be able to obtain a high paying job. So I think we need to encourage, not only look at our higher education institutions, which are important, but as well as the trades. And we need to restore funding to those vocational programs to help encourage our young people to enter fields that maybe were previously discouraged by those cuts. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Michelle?
I have to say, I think this is one of these things that Amy and I are going to agree upon. I agree that we need to extend our vocational and training programs throughout high school for our younger population, but even for older populations, setting up training and vocational programs for those that are unemployed or underemployed, to make sure that they have the opportunities to develop the skills they need. I think those are great. That's a great opportunity. I'd also like to see more apprentice programs, having some conversation with some of our building trades people and talking about the apprentice programs that have gone by the wayside. And I'd like to see us with more opportunities there. I also will say that I'm supportive of expanding the Rhode Island Promise program. I think making sure that everyone has access to an affordable education, I think is important. But it's just about college, it's about training for the trades and for vocations, and making sure that everybody has an opportunity to learn a skill that is marketable and is going to provide them with a job source to support their families.
Thank you, Michelle. And now we'll hear from Terry.
Thank you. I was just on a call this morning with 80 other people, and we were talking about the needs of the lack of CNAs and home health aides that our elderly people depend on, and people with disabilities. So, and we're also sitting here talking about what might happen to our hospitality industry. So perhaps some job training needs to happen so that people can more easily switch careers. We have a shortage of CNAs right now, so I would definitely encourage CCRI and maybe even high schools to start introducing those programs, much like everybody has said, through internships and training programs. I've been personally working with the Oliver Hazard Perry, connecting the CEO of that organization with everybody under the sun that will listen to him, because he's very excited about offering internships to through Rhode or through CCRI, through Rhode Island Marine Trades. And so I'm on board with what everybody has said here. I think providing young people and unemployed adults with a variety of opportunities to improve their skills and maybe switch careers is very important, especially at this time.
Thank you, Terry. Ken?
Yes, Erin, I am not personally a fan of the Commerce Corp and the amount of money, the hundreds of millions that they've invested on winners and losers. But something that they've done quite well is that they have set up area workshops and alliances with school systems to help high school students learn a trade. And in particular, it's whether it's welding, so that they could go and work over at Electric Boat, which is going to have business for the next 20 some years, building the next generation submarine. But what we don't have is they haven't made an investment in the East Bay. And so what we need to do is we need to go to Commerce Corp and say, look, set up a partnership here on the East Bay where our kids who are in high school, if they choose that they don't want to go to college, that they'll have an opportunity to learn a trade and perhaps migrate over into the defense industry. Again, learning a trade and being able to do this, it certainly could be the journeyman people who have an interest in doing this. And I think that's something that we should look at. I have a master's degree in business administration, and there's no doubt that having an education, a solid education, is a key that will open up doors for anybody with a degree. I'm very much an advocate for that. Again, I think that looking at it locally, we should go after commerce and say, hey, make an investment in here to help our trades and help our young people get the skill set that we need. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ken. And now to Lauren.
Thank you. I think in the very, very short term, and I mean like next week, we need to be evaluating whether or not this gap is getting greater under COVID. We don't really know what the impact has been to students in schools. We have at-home learning now, distance learning. We have to make sure our kids are not falling behind under current learning environments. The second thing is that I did support the promise. I do support the free tuition at CCRI. I don't know if we'll be able to keep it under the budget. We've already discussed the budget at length. I'm hoping we'll be able to keep that. Work is changing. Work is changing. More people are working at home. We do need more trades. We need to look at what are the 21st century jobs. Those are the kinds of evaluations that need to be made, and that's where money needs to be spent. Young people will hold many different jobs in their lives. They're not like it was 50 years ago where you became a plumber and you worked at it for 60 years. People will hold different jobs. And I think we need to have the kids and young students trained to do a variety of things. And we do need to encourage them to go into the trades. I'm a big supporter of that. I think an education is invaluable. It's yours. You keep it for the rest of your life. But it does seem to be that's where the workforce can grow. And those are the services we need on Aquidneck Island. Have you ever tried to find a plumber on Aquidneck Island or an electrician? It takes weeks and weeks. So those are the jobs right now, really. They are.
Thank you, Lauren. And so now we're going to move into the next portion of the forum this evening for yes or no answers. So I'm going to ask a few yes or no questions for you to either agree with or disagree with by raising your hand. Leave your hands raised until I call out the names of those who have agreed or disagreed. You need to raise your hand one way or the other, so you can't abstain. After I've asked the third question, candidates will be given 90 seconds to explain or expand on any of your responses. So again, I will read the question and ask for those who agree to raise their hand. I'll say who agreed. You'll put them down. I'll ask for those who disagree to raise their hand, and then I'll identify who disagreed. Then we'll move on to the next question, okay? Okay, so the first question this evening: do you support the recent proposal that the Department of Transportation take over the Rhode Island Bridge and Turnpike Authority? Please raise your hand if you agree with the proposal. May the record show that no candidates agreed. Please raise your hand if you disagree with that proposal. All 5 candidates disagree with the proposal for DOT to take over Bridge and Turnpike. The second question: the Transportation and Climate Initiative is a multi-state effort amongst the transportation, energy, and environmental state agencies in 11 mid-Atlantic and Northeast states and the District of Columbia to work collaboratively to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from the transportation sector. Do you support Governor Raimondo's efforts in participating in this multi-state initiative? If you agree, please raise your hand. Terry Cortran, Lauren Carson, and Mcgaw agree. Do you disagree with the governor's participation in this multi-state effort? Ken Mendonca and Amy Very. Thank you very much. The third question, would you support legislation to allow cocktails to go to become a permanent law in the state of Rhode Island? Please raise your hand if you agree. Ken Mendonca and Amy Very agree. Please raise your hand if you disagree. Lauren Carson, Terry Cortran, and Mcgaw disagree with the proposal. Thank you all very much. Those conclude the questions for the evening. And so now we will move on to closing statements. In reverse order from how we began with opening statements, we will start this process. You will have 90 seconds both for your, you will have 90 seconds to explain any one of the answers that you just voted on. You can also answer to all three of those if you would like. Each of you will have 90 seconds. I will start with the reverse order. So I will start with Terry Cortran.
Okay, so these are not closing statements. These
Correct. We will have another segment for closing statements. I apologize.
I am in favor of the governor looking into working with our regional states to see what we can do to reduce emissions through transportation. That's how we're going to get to our goals of carbon reduction. So I support that. I would like to look further into what the implications are regarding letting people continue the process of takeout drinks. I'm not adamant on that, but I wouldn't want to say yes without hearing from what police think about that, what constituents think about that. I'd just like to know what the implications of that are. So that's why I was a no on that at this point. And what's the third question that we responded to?
Bridge and Turnpike Authority and Department of Transportation merging.
Right. Our bridges, we saw what happened to the Sakonnet River Bridge when that happened. So at this point in time, I'm not in favor of that. All three town councils have put out resolutions against it. So I stand by them. Thank you.
Thank you. Ken?
Yes, Aaron. From a bridge and turnpike perspective, they should remain separate. Maybe sometime down the road when we figure all this out, whether or not it should be combined, if there's savings or not. But I think they have two different charters and two different missions, and I think that we should keep them separate. Remember, the Bridge and Turnpike Authority also have a board of directors that oversees their operations. We don't quite have the same thing that oversees RIDOT. So from that standpoint, from the cocktails to go, look, I don't see a difference if you go into a package store and you buy something and put it in your pocket, drive it home, or if you have a custom cocktail made at a restaurant and bring it home. I don't see the difference there. But the last thing is the TCI initiative. Rhode Island has the third highest energy costs in the nation. So you talk about gasoline, oil, you name it, and we have the third highest cost in the nation today. And when you look at our overall emissions, we're insignificant from that standpoint. Adding more cost to businesses, we've been talking about economics for most of these questions today, and how is increasing it by the gas tax by 25 cents, how is that going to help businesses? I mean, how is that going to help the everyday person who's trying to get to work when our emissions is not an issue here in the state of Rhode Island? Our bad air comes from the Midwest. So that's my position. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ken. And now we'll go to Lauren.
Thank you. My position on the merging of Rhode with the Bridge Authority has been perfectly clear for months. I'm opposed to that. The cocktails to go, maybe the viewers know that I was the co-sponsor of a bill introduced last week that would extend cocktails to go until December of 2021. So in essence, I do support that concept. I have some concerns about how it's going to work out, particularly in a tourism community where I live. It apparently has generated a lot of waste on the street. We've seen a lot of parties of people drinking and walking around, disturbing neighborhoods. We need to, in my community, as much as I want to work with the Hospitality Association, and I did that by co-sponsoring this bill, I think we also need to evaluate how this is going to work over the long haul. In fact, I've called upon restaurants to help to clean up Newport. I mean, if there's going to be a lot of takeaway waste, I've called upon restaurants to put waste containers out in front of their stores so that as people walk around, they can drop off their waste. I think that would go a long way to cleaning up Newport, making residents feel comfortable that this is not creating a lot of waste in town, and it's a win-win for everybody. So I think there are some issues that we need to work out by making it long-term, but in the essence, I did support it in the short term, and I'm proud to have co-sponsored that bill. Finally, I think we need to work with other states. I'm not sure that your question really spoke to the cost of the transportation proposal. The way I understood it was, should we be working in a regional capacity to reduce carbon? And the answer to that is yes. What all the solutions are at this moment, we don't know, but that's why we need to keep talking to our neighbors.
Thank you, Lauren. And now we'll go to Amy. You're on mute.
That's what I get for putting in mute for the first time. So I do not support merging the Bridge and Turnpike Authority with the Department of Transportation for the reasons already stated. They both have separate duties, separate charters, and I don't think it would be wise at this time to combine them. As for the TCI initiative, I think in reviewing it when it was last proposed during the previous legislative sessions, the financial burden it was going to place upon the citizens of Rhode Island was onerous. It was 25 cents at a minimum tax already on the extremely high gas tax that we already pay, which is going to ultimately punish those of us that are living paycheck to paycheck or financially struggling. Now it's going to make it even more difficult to get to work, to take your kids to school, or to go to the doctor's office. As far as cocktails to go, I think it's a great idea. I think it's a way of modifying and coming up with a creative solution during the current times that we live in. I think we should be encouraging businesses to come up with these creative solutions as opposed to punishing them. As Ms. Carson had indicated that she would want to place a burden on businesses to put out trash receptacles, I don't think it's the business's duty to take care of that unless you can overwhelmingly prove that the trash is coming from that specific business. I think it's already a financial burden to operate a business in the state. We don't need to be putting any more burden upon them. Although I do encourage people not to litter, I think there are other ways that we can go about it without placing a financial burden upon the restaurants. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. And now we'll go to Michelle.
Okay, as the representative, I would want to represent the communities that of my district, and I will say regarding the Bridge Authority, the communities in this district are not supportive of that. They would like to see them remain separate, and so I would have to respect what they have been requesting. So that's why I would not support that. In regards to take-home beverages, honestly, again, like in listening to the people in the district, it's not something that I hear them clamoring for. So I don't know, I honestly don't know what the people in my district would feel about it, because it's not something that people are talking about in the district. Am I opposed to it? I don't necessarily see that as an issue. I also don't know necessary it is. So I would need to know more about that, and like Terry said, talk a little bit more with police officials to find out their thoughts on those types of things. And so that's something I would have to look at a little bit more. And then regarding alternative transportation opportunities, I do think it's important that we look to other states and we try to figure out how we can all work together. Whether or not the specific proposal that we're discussing is exactly the right one, that may not be exactly the right proposal, but I do think it's important that we're working with our communities. And I think that we do have significant emissions issues here, right, in Rhode Island that we do need to address. And I'm not willing to say that it's not an issue here in Rhode Island.
Thank you, Michelle. And now we are moving on to our closing statements. So each of you will have 90 seconds to summarize your candidacy or highlight whatever you choose for your closing statement. And we will start again in the reverse order as we just did. So we will start with Terry Cortran.
Am I unmuted? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. I want to thank you all for having us here this evening. It's been great conversation. On some of the issues, it seems like we are not that far apart. So I think it's always important to look for common ground and listen to all the perspectives in the room. And I want to talk to the voters and encourage everyone to get out and vote. There's 3 different ways to vote this year. You can vote by mail, you can early vote at your town hall, or you can go out on voting day and cast your ballot there. And if you have questions about my candidacy, please look at voteterry.com and or send me an email or give me a call. I'd be happy to engage with anyone. I have some upcoming talks with Terry, so I'm on Facebook, Twitter. You can find me anywhere, and I appreciate the opportunity tonight, and I look forward to engaging with the people in District 72, and I do ask for your vote. And thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Terry. And now we'll go to Ken Mendonça.
Thank you, Erin. To the voters of District 72, I stand by my record serving you. I demonstrated my ability to work with my fellow representatives, regardless of party affiliation, to be the prime sponsor of legislation that enabled an established small business on Aquidneck Ave to expand their jitney service to include green electric vehicles on public roadways. I was also the prime sponsor of legislation that enabled Middletown Municipal Court to double the fines for party houses, a piece of legislation that had been stalled for quite some time. I was also the co-sponsor of enabling legislation that permitted Middletown to implement tax incremental financing with the goal to eventually bury the power lines on Lower Aquidneck Ave. I was also the co-sponsor of legislation that imposed size and weight restrictions on the through traffic on in the Forest Ave school zone. In addition to that, I was also the co-sponsor of 4 statewide important pieces of legislation while serving you. The summary of those pieces are available at electkenri.com. Going to be running out of time to continue. I look forward to serving you, and I ask for your vote on November 3rd. Thank you, and I want to thank again the sponsors for holding this forum. Have a great night.
Thank you, Ken. And now we'll go to Lauren Carson.
Thank you, Erin. Thank you. To the voters of House District 75, I'm asking you for your vote for a 4th term. 2020 has been like no other. In my role as a state legislator, I've helped many of you with filing your unemployment claims, renewing your driver's licenses, applying for small business grants and loans, getting Newport children safely back to school, and I have completely supported easier access to mail ballots this year. But I look forward to a 4th term. In my next term, I will govern collaboratively to move Rhode Island forward because we are all really tired of the divisiveness that plagues our communities each day when we look at the news. But I will not abandon my values, and I will not abandon the interests of the city of Newport. I know that my constituents want me to work collaboratively in order to move Rhode Island and Newport forward. And I believe that community leaders and elected officials must work together to bridge the tremendous gaps that have divided us over the past 4 years. Voters want policymakers to be responsive, available, and transparent more than ever. And you also want us to advocate for solutions that are smart and effective, and I'm willing to do all of those things. Voters want to be part of the conversation, And so I'm asking you to join me on this journey. But above all, I want to thank you for the confidence you've had in me the last 6 years. Good night and have a good evening.
Thank you, Lauren. And now we'll go to Amy Very.
To the voters and constituents of House District 71, I want to say the reason I'm running is to give you a voice. I'm an independent thinker, and my goal is to go up there and advocate for our needs, not the needs of our legislative leaders or of a particular party. I think there are great ideas on both sides of the aisle, and I think an effective leader is one that can listen to everybody, not just a particular party or particular agenda. And that is what I plan to do. I want to advocate for us. I want to do what is right by the district because we have been silenced for far too long. As an attorney, I'm used to fighting for what is right. And I never give up no matter how high the hurdle or how big the obstacle in my way. And I will continue to do that as the representative for District 71. I ask for your vote on November 3rd. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. And now to Michelle Mcgaw.
Thank you again to everybody and to the voters. The reason that I decided to run really was because I was concerned that we did not have representation that was listening to the people of our district. And I have taken that task to heart. And for more than a year now, I have been out listening to you, out talking with people on the telephone, talking with people on their doors. But even before then, for several years now, I have been working not just in Portsmouth, but in Tiverton and Little Compton, really actively working within the community, living in the community, talking with people and listening to what's important to you. As your representative, I think it's important that you have someone who has been listening to you, understands what your needs are, understands what your priorities are. I have priorities of my own, things that I think are really important that I want to fight for, like affordable health care and working towards climate initiatives. But listening to all of the voters in District 71 has been really important to me and has provided me with a lot of information about what you want your representative to bring forward at the State House. Transparent government. I know that you agree with me on healthcare. I know that you agree with me on climate. You've told me how important education is to your families. And we've talked about so many issues, and I really look forward to being able to bring those issues forward. And thank you for sharing your thoughts and your ambitions with me over the past year. And I hope you will vote for me in November.
Thank you, Michelle. So that concludes our forum for the evening. I want to thank you all so much for participating tonight and for putting your hat in the ring in this very challenging year. We need leadership in our municipalities and at the state level, and I commend you all for putting your name forward and working very hard throughout this campaign season. I wish you the best of luck, and to our viewers, you can view other forums like this prior to the election on any of the partners' websites. Go to Newport This Week or greaternewportchamber.com, and you can find all of these forums for your viewer pleasure. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight, and best of luck.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Have a good
you.
night.